Hey, I'm Andrew Hall, and this is Dead Hand Radio. My guest for this episode is Scott Browne, UFO investigator, researcher, and founder of In the Field, an online collective of researchers and analysts dedicated to capturing and identifying authentic images and footage of UFO activity. Scott is a photographer and an artist who's been studying the phenomenon since the 90s and has examined thousands of photos and many hours of video footage. This is Scott's second time on the podcast. Last time we talked about his experiences and how he became interested in the topic of UFOs. And we discussed some of the details about a method of capturing UFOs on camera called skyfishing. This time around, we're going to talk about many of the misidentifications and hoaxes that plague the field of ufology and how to quickly eliminate these types of images from the mix. Welcome back to Dead Hand Radio, Scott.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you back on. As I mentioned last time we talked, you shared your experiences and how you got into the study of the topic of UFOs. So I'm going to refer people back to that podcast episode if they want to learn a lot more in depth about you and how you came into this role as a person who studies this topic. Um,
Sure.
at one time, you were a member of MUFON. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Uh,
go ahead.
it was back in the 90s.
Okay. Um, and then just recently, you were a guest speaker for the Nevada MUFON chapter, and you gave a presentation that uh, is basically what you're going to share with us tonight, right?
Yes.
Um, and I just wanted you to know that I did get some incredible feedback from the investigators, the field investigators that were on that live stream or that meeting. It was a Zoom meeting, and people were blown away by the amount of information that you shared with with us um, through that meeting, that presentation, and a couple of people even feel that that presentation should be required viewing for field investigators. I kind of agree with that. I think that the information is quality information, and we're going to get right into that. If you are able to share your screen,
Let's see.
is it is it giving you a is it rejecting it because it's not popping up over here for me?
Yeah, it's telling me um, because I'm using Google Chrome.
Uh, well,
And
you can
I
open
have,
it in a different browser, and then it'll give you the option when you share screen. It'll give you the option to choose the browser and the tab.
yeah, see, I originally had it open in Safari, but it told me to use Chrome.
Right, Safari doesn't work well with this platform. Um, so you can open the presentation. Is it a Google presentation? Google Slides?
No, I did it a notebook. Actually, it's called Pages,
Oh, I've
which,
never heard of that.
which is on the Mac.
That may be the problem. It may be a there may be a conflict with this platform and that one. Is it possible for you to export that as a PowerPoint?
Actually, hold on. I think I got it figured out. Let's see. Okay, so I have to grant permission, apparently.
Okay. There we
Can you
go.
see it?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
So that's not the right. That's not the right. I think you might have shared the wrong tab or the wrong application. Is it a browser-based application?
Let's see. It says web-based live streaming audio melon.
Okay, so when you click share screen, it should give you like three options to choose from. You can choose application window, your
Yes,
entire screen, application window, or the browser tab that you're
right,
using.
right.
And then you could choose the option of, if it's a browser based, choose which browser and which tab.
So let's see. I have to go into preferences for Chrome, I guess. Sorry about this.
No, it's kind of my fault. We should have worked out the bugs before we got to this point. My fault. And I didn't think we would have any problems. It went off smoothly when we did it on Zoom, but Melon is a different platform, so obviously some conflicts with that. And uh,
So it's not letting me do that again. Well, let's see if I can try this.
all right, so I see that's the same screen. So it just shared the window that you're streaming from.
Can you pull it up now and do it again?
Yeah, well, try sharing it again. Same thing.
Even if I shut that down?
Yeah, it's just showing the screen that you and I are on.
Oh boy. Well, let me try
As a final option, you could send it to me, and I could do the screen share from my end while you do the talking. But I don't have a Mac. I have a Windows PC.
well, I did actually. Here, let me do this. I'll just export this as a PDF.
That should work. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we'll get through it and get the presentation started here pretty quick. But if anybody has any questions, it's a little premature since Scott hasn't really started talking. But anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat window.
Okay, so I exported it as a PDF,
Mm-hmm.
and
Once you launch Adobe Acrobat, you should be able to share that on your. I should give you the option to share. That'll be an application um, window.
all right, so I have it up, but I still think that it's has something to do with my permissions. It's permissions to the system. Here, let me try.
Okay, so it's just me now. Scott dropped off of the stream. Oh, here he comes back on.
I'm back, right?
Yeah, he left me hanging, dude.
All right, so no, it still says follow these steps.
Do you want to just send me that PDF?
Preferences, security, privacy, is screen recording. Okay, let me try this. Let's see. Slides. Let me see here. Well, hardware. No, it's not letting me do that.
Okay.
So
Do you want to
you
send
want
me
me?
a PDF?
You want me to just email you the PDF?
Yes, that'd be probably the easiest way.
All right. So let's see. It's not going to let me.
It won't let you email the PDF.
No, because the file's too big. It won't let me push it through because of all the images that are in
Okay.
there. The
How
file,
big is it?
it's 25 megs.
You can upload it to Google Drive.
Okay, I don't think I've ever done that before.
Dropbox.
No, so how do I get there? I've never really used it, so.
Well, so Google Drive is just go to drive.google.com, and then it's going to ask you to log in.
All right, so Google Drive. Trying to keep it rolling, you know.
Yeah, we should have worked out the bugs. I didn't think it was going to be an issue. I should have, because I've had people on Macs have trouble with this platform before, but so that's a pretty encouraging comment. This is great. We're getting a crash course in technology. Thank you. That's one of the loyal fans.
All right, she's almost uploaded.
All right, cool. So once it's uploaded,
Yep.
then you can share it with me.
Okay, so I'm just giving you the link, right?
No, you could just um, once it's in Google Drive, you click on it,
Yep.
and then there's a little icon up at the top of the window that
It says,
allows you to share it.
yeah, it says open with Google Docs.
You don't want to open it. You could just click the link and send it to me, or you could share it. And if you share it with me, share it with my deadhandradio@gmail.com.
Well, we'll give it a shot and see what happens here.
Yeah. And
let's try this and see what happens. Now, I don't know if I sent the right thing, but we'll see.
okay. Okay. Let's see where to go. Shared with me.
So, did I send the wrong thing?
I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing the file that you shared. Take another look at this. Oh yeah, you did. You set the URL to Google Drive. So if you click on the file, then look at the top of the right above the page where the files are located. There's some icons. One of them is a link. You can get the link from that.
No, all I have at the top is open with Google Docs.
Okay, do you see where it says My Drive? Or what if you right
Yes,
click?
yes,
If you right click on the file, it gives you a menu
right.
and get link.
No, it doesn't have that.
Hmm.
It doesn't have a get link. It's just
Hmm.
oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, I think I have it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just sent that. I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah, that looks more like it. Uh,
No.
well, it's asking me to request access.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's okay. I'll do that. I sent a request to access it. Now you got to approve it, and then we should be able to, we should be able to get this started.
Now, where would that request show up?
It would come to you as an email, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think it went through.
There we go. Okay, here we go. Going to share that tab.
Ah, the wonderful world of technology.
All right, here we go. So I'll make us small, make that big. And as you talk, just tell me to.
Next slide.
Right. Yeah, just tell me to hit the next slide, and I'll do that.
All right. So, this first part, I guess we'll go into, because I put this at the beginning because a lot of people and a lot of, uh, researchers have mistaken lens flares and lens reflections. So it's kind of one of the bigger ones that's always out there. So there's a, a set of them. There's a few different kinds, and we'll go into them. So we'll start with the first one. Okay, so this is
Shoot, it's not lining up correctly for some reason. Here we go.
okay. So this first one I call a filtered lens flare, and when this happens, a bright light source comes through the branches of a tree, a set of wires, something that's in front of the bright light source, and it creates a lens flare which has a pattern to it. So you can see some of these here where they've come through the tree. It picks up some of the shapes of what's in front of it and creates this type of lens flare, which is kind of unique. But it's been mistaken many times for something paranormal. And people have to remember too is that you know you need a bright light source to create any type of lens flare. Some people have come to me and said, is this a lens flare? But if there's no bright light source within the frame of the camera, 99% of the time it's not going to create a lens flare. The light actually has to be within frame for it to create anything. So this one here is one that I shot in I believe it was a Walmart parking lot, and it's showing the reflection of the bright lights bouncing off the lens, and it shows up in the photograph. Depending on the shape of that light, it's going to create a certain type of look to the lens flare. And if you move the camera around with this lens flare, you can pretty much put it wherever you want. And you can see that in videos too, where somebody will be filming at night and they'll catch a bright light and that lens flare is moving around. So with photographs, of course, it's still. So people think, it's got to be something anomalous, but, we're dealing with another type of lens flare. This is the more common one. This is not so much that they really all are reflections, but they're created in different ways. And this one, these here are actually just created by the internal structure of the camera. So you can see clearly the bottom left, the blue one that has the green and the red, that is the internal structure of the camera. So when the light bounces in there, it's bouncing off the different surfaces in the camera's inner body, and it's creating this lens flare. So depending on the make of camera, the angle of the light, it's going to create some type of different sort of lens flare. This next one ended up in the news, and it made a bunch of the online kind of tabloid news sites. So in the top picture, you can see that's the full photograph that we went and we found that. On the right side is showing the article with the light source of the sun is cropped out. So it's looking as if this glowing object is floating over the ocean. But in reality, it's a lens flare created by the camera, and then the person cropped the sun out, sent it into this website, and they posted it as something anomalous. It's something that hoaxers like to use it a lot because they can get away with it. People can't figure it out. So here's another classic lens flare. This is actually on Time Magazine's top 10 list for unexplained photos. I'm not sure why. It's older, and you can see the sun down below the water tower. It's coming right through the trees and then creating this lens flare. And so apparently at some point, someone called it a UFO, and they posted it as their top 10. I'm not really sure why, because they have a lot of amazing photographers working for them. So this is another one that I took myself. It's outside during the day. I directed the lens flare to be inside of the cloud on purpose, just to show that I could put it wherever I wanted it. And again, you can't see the structure of the light because it's so bright. But when you look at the lens flare, you can see where those lights are and how it's shaped, because it's bouncing off the lens and then it's ending up in the photograph. So really what you're photographing is the reflection of the light onto the lens. And then when the camera goes off, it's just taking the picture with the reflection on the lens, but it looks like it's in the sky. So this is a different type, and this is inside of a house. And a lot of people who, it's been misidentified, but it's also been used by people who like to hoax things. And you can take it through a house window, you can take it through the windshield of a car. And this was sent to me by a member of In the Field. He had shot it on purpose and sent it to me so I could have it as an example. This is another one that made some of the tabloid sites, bounced around a couple years ago. And you can clearly see all the bright lights in the parking lot, and they pretty much line up with the lights that are in the sky. And a lot of these make these tabloid websites, they use them to get, it's clickbait. They use them to get them to click on the story. And I'm sure some of them are fully aware that these are lens flares, but, if it's going to drive traffic to their website, they really don't care. This is just another setup of the...
Internal camera.
Yeah, this is just, those are your average ones. This one here is very characteristic of cell phones, and cell phones will create this green dot. And I mean, there are just thousands of these online, and I've had them sent to me. For some reason, because of the internal structure of the phone camera, most of the time they will create this green dot. And we'll get to one later that has the green dot, but it also has smaller dots within it, which is a different type of situation. These are some more lens reflections bouncing off the light. The one in the center went viral because it just so happens that street lamp happened to be round, resembles a UFO, so it just went viral. But as you can see, you can go to any light that's a bright spotlight like that and create it yourself. It's very simple to do.
So with lens flares, it doesn't have to necessarily be shot through a window. The lens flare is bouncing off of the glass of the camera
Right.
and creating that
So,
reflection. Okay.
yeah, so the window on shooting through glass is a different type of situation because you're reflecting something that's either in the room or in the vehicle with you, and it will bounce onto the window, and then you're just photographing it. So it's not really a lens flare. You're actually photographing a reflection. So this is one that just went viral a few days ago. This was called a mothership that someone had photographed and videotaped supposedly in Paraguay. And when it came online and I got a hold of the photo, I had not seen the video yet. So they claimed that it was two different witnesses. And you can see to the right here that the video and the photo are almost identical. So if there was two witnesses, they were sitting side by side because it was taken in the same spot. I recognized it as a reflection from inside of a vehicle. And it was stated right up front that this man who took this was in his pickup truck. So they already stated that he was in a vehicle. I went out a few days later and recreated it in my car, which is at the bottom of the graphic. Same thing. It's a reflection of my stereo in my car. I can move the camera around and put it anywhere I want. I could have even taken a piece of tape and blocked out some of the lights and just had a couple of rows, and it would have looked even closer to it. So this is something that they like to use too. But this went viral, and a lot of people were arguing, going back and forth about it, but I pretty much knew what it was right away. And you can see, especially because of the color of the lights. So what you're looking at in the Paraguay photo is the lights from the stereo, but it's a mirror image. So it's flipped upside down. So that confuses people even more because, it doesn't look like a stereo in a car, because it's flipped upside down. So it kind of, it throws people off, but they like to use that method too. So this is another one that I had just dug up the other day. It's from a few years ago. Same thing. It's a reflection of a gauge light in a car. Someone took it over the highway through their windshield, and you can see gauges on the right side, which are not exactly identical, but there's so many different kinds. But again, at the angle that the gauge is photographed, it looks like a UFO. But all you're doing is looking at the gauge from the side. It's just a reflection of that. We saw this one already. That went viral. So this is a different type of situation. This is where pointing the camera into a bright light source will overwhelm the capacitor in the camera, creating this black dot in the very center. It's not smart to go out and try to do this yourself. Usually people do it by accident, but you can damage your camera sometimes by doing this, especially with the sun. But this has been claimed in the past to be a UFO that's hiding in the sun. You can't see it because you can't look at the sun. But again, it's just an effect of the camera and the capacitor being overwhelmed with the light, creating the black dot.
And just for a general tip on photography, shooting into the sun, it will ruin your sensor in a DSLR. It'll create cold spots in your sensor, which show up on your images as little dark spots.
Right.
I have that problem because I shoot, and it happens with photographs of the moon as well because it's such a bright spot.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
These are more examples of people shooting through glass. And actually the one that's up on the top left, I believe I had taken a quarter and put it on the dashboard in the car. And it was a reflection of that. The other ones were either given to me or I found them online.
The one over the water's pretty impressive looking. Looks like two angled
Yeah,
UFOs.
that one actually went viral a few years ago, and I believe it's over Loch Ness. And so they were trying to claim that it was ships going into the water of Loch Ness, and found out later that somebody had been in a small outbuilding there and had shot it through the window.
The lower right hand corner one looks like a hanging light.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Reflection of an indoor light?
Yeah, so is the one in the center too.
Oh, okay.
Same thing. And same thing here. You can see the shape of the light matches what's in the sky, and that one went viral too. There's a lot of them that will go viral for a while. This one you can see the configuration of the lights, which are all inset into a ceiling in a room.
Yeah.
Another reflection on glass.
Yeah. Now I could see where somebody might get excited and think that they've shot an anomalous craft. But if you change angles in where if you shoot one photo and you don't take any other photos and this thing never moves, you're going to figure it out sooner or later that you're shooting a reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like some of these could be mistakenly put out there as UFOs, but
and they are. There are people that have sent them to me that are, just excited, and I can't believe I caught this on film, and I don't. I try to be, as easy with them as I can to let them down, to tell them, it's, so where did you take it? Did you take it behind a window? Were you in your car? So usually they'll be honest, and then they'll be like, oh, I was standing in my kitchen, and, so, like you said, a lot of them, they don't have any idea. They really are mistaken. They believe it's something, but, again, then you've got your people that they know how to create it and they know how to get it out there, and then they just sit back and let it ride, and it goes viral, and everybody's talking about it, and they're just sitting back having a good old time, So,
Yeah. And that's where the real problem is.
so a bunch of these have gone around for a while, and these small dots that are inside the phone, they're called focus pixels. And a lot of times when the cell phone, and you can see, like I said, the cell phones will create the green dot. But a lot of times, if enough light gets in there, it will create the green dot, but covered with the smaller dots, which are reflections of these focus pixels. And they're built into the phone. So you'll get a lens flare that's a green dot that's covered with these weird, bizarre dots. And a lot of those went around for a while. So this one is where water had gotten on the lens. It's actually frames from a video that went viral a while ago. And some water got on the lens, and when the light hit that water, it created this weird image. And in the video, it looks like it's almost taking off to the left. It looks like a UFO that's just taking off. But it's just water, and the light hit it just in the right way, and the angle was right, and that will create, an artifact as well.
So is this an image that you took, or how did you figure out this was water?
Because I've done it myself.
Okay.
So a lot of times it will take me a while to figure it out because I haven't done it myself. So most of the time with most of these now, I've gone and done experiments with my own cameras and figured it out. It took me a little bit, but I finally figured it out. This one here I took through a restaurant. I was sitting in this restaurant with big plate glass windows. They had inset lights into the ceiling, and they were spread far enough apart so I could get just one single one. So I shot it through the window to use as an example, and it created the perfect fake little UFO.
Yeah, definitely. That is an impressive looking photo. If you put it out as a legit photo, and fortunately, you're not the kind of person that's going to put fake photos out there as um, as hoaxes, or as presenting them as real photos.
No, that's something that's I'm definitely against.
Yeah.
This one's from a place near where I work. And you can see the different configuration. The light is rectangle shaped, and same thing, bright light bounces off the camera. The camera catches it as it goes off. So this is using that first one that we spoke about, the what I call the filtered lens flare. It's coming through the pine trees, and what I was trying to show here was the same thing that was used in the other graphic, where the light source is cropped out of the photograph. So if I send the bottom photo with the trees to someone and say, hey, look what I caught, they have no idea because there's no bright light source in the photograph because it's been cropped out.
Yep.
So they can, that's been used multiple times. Flare drops, huge problem. They're always being caught on video. And I always tell people it's hard to see it at night. But if it's like daytime or it's dusk and you've caught it on video or you've caught it on, in photos, you can look for the small smoke trails that will come off of each flare. And you can see it clearly in the top left photograph. You can see where those smoke trails are coming off the flares. Another thing, it just happened. There was I can't exactly remember where it happened. But near where this video was shot, are multiple military bases. You can tell by the color. They fall. They'll only last a few minutes because obviously they'll burn out. They'll usually slowly fall right to the ground. Sometimes it'll take them a little bit. And there's certain characteristics to them. They're not flying around. They're not taking off. They're just slowly floating straight down to the ground. So the story behind this one is this was created. This is kind of a different type as well. This is inside of a vehicle. But what it is the flash of the cell phone going off on the glass. And so I had a woman come into the group in the field a couple years ago, and her husband, they were members for a while. And then one day she sent me a photograph and she said, my husband and I were out driving the other day and we saw this object off of this bridge, and I want to send you the photograph and have you take a look at it. So she sent it to me and I recognized it. And I said, were you inside the vehicle when you took this photograph? And she swore up and down that they both got out. They were standing on the bridge. So, I was trying to figure out a way to prove it just without a shadow of a doubt that this was inside this vehicle. And I zoomed in on the photo, and as I came down to the left-hand corner, I could see reflected on the window the small letters that are on the mirror outside the car. And so I blew that part of the photo up and I sent it to her and I said, I think you were inside the vehicle because these letters are being reflected on the window. And I never heard from her again.
Is it on this image?
No, I created this one.
Got it.
To be an example of what she did, which was the flash inside of a car.
Okay.
And here we have a bunch of flares again. That's always a problem. Flares again. That's a blow up showing the smoke trails coming off the flares. So this is insects. Another huge problem. These are all insects caught on security cameras. And a lot of times, if the insect is very close to the lens of the camera, it will just look like a blob. It won't have any legs. It'll just move right across the screen as like a glowing orb or a UFO. And it's just a constant problem. People are always catching this stuff on their security cams and thinking it's something paranormal or something bizarre. But when the illuminator on the cameras hits something that close to the camera, it just distorts it. And, depending on the distance from the lens is when you can start to make out antennas and legs and wings. But if it's really close, you can't really make out any details. So it just, looks like a blob or an orb. This one took me a little while to figure out. I had been seeing a lot of these online, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then one night I was out with my night vision camera, and I caught it on film, and I realized what it was. So this is a strand of insect silk, whether it's a spider or something else, that is blowing in the wind. And when the light from the illuminator catches that strand, it will create this effect. And there's actually a video that's going around right now with it in it, where a guy caught it, and it's being spread all over the place like it's some kind of paranormal. And I commented it on YouTube. I made a comment about it, and of course they didn't like it, and got angry about it. But that's what it is. I caught it with my own cam, and then stuck my hand out and pretty much just snapped right through. I could feel the webbing, and that's what it was. And insects moving in front of the camera, depending on distance, depending on type of insect, will create all kinds of bizarre patterns. So I try to tell people that if you caught something in the photograph, always be aware of the focal point. So if this so-called anomaly that you're looking at, is it blurry and the background is sharp, which means whatever it is closer to the camera. And insects have just created so many problems. There's so many people that catch them and, think it's something amazing. And I mean, like I said, depending on the insect, it can create all kinds of different patterns with their legs and their wings. And so big problem there.
So I just want you to repeat that again. If the distant part of the image, if the farthest away part of the image is in focus, and the object that is unidentified is blurred, that means that it's closer to the camera.
Right. So there's another example coming up where I'll show you where I illustrated that exactly. More insects caught on webcams. I'm sorry, trail cams, infrared security cameras. Depending on the frames per second, it will create these type of trails. And a lot of people will, in years before, would call these rods and believe that they were something paranormal. And if you look at it very closely, you can see the pattern of the beating of the wings of the insect that will create that pattern, and it will repeat itself. And it's just insects.
It's just long exposure photography, right?
You can do it that way, but with the trail cams and the security cameras, this is actually on video.
Oh, okay.
So these are frames taken out of the video. Some of them are cameras that will go off because it's moving in front of it. But some are caught on video.
Now, if somebody put these out as just long exposure images and not try to push them off as UFOs, this would be pretty cool type of photography. It would be artistic. It could be even presented as fine art photography because it's so unique.
Yeah, there's another example we'll come to where the insects are swarming underneath a bright light and creating all kinds of just bizarre patterns. Again, more of them caught on security cameras, closed circuit TV cameras. So here's what I was talking about. This picture, more to the left-hand corner. So as you can see, the spider is in focus on the bottom, and it's on the web itself. But if you look at the top picture where it says the focus of the camera can be very deceiving, now the camera is focused on the sky.
Right.
So the sky is sharp. The bug becomes just a black blob. There's no discerning any legs or wings or anything. And the same thing with the bumblebee. I blurred that one on purpose to use it as an example. So here's what I was talking about with the swarms of insects caught underneath lights, especially on the bottom left. You can see just the bizarre patterns that it creates. So depending on your brand of camera, your your shutter speed or your frames per second, you can experiment and create all kinds of bizarre looking artifacts by doing that type of thing. And a lot of times people will catch it by accident, and they've never seen it before, so they're amazed by it and they're thinking, my God, what is this? It's so bizarre. But it's a lot of people don't see this stuff. They don't see insects creating those trails like that. So here's what I was talking about with the comparison with the different um, distances from the lens. And you can see some are sharp, you can see antennas and legs, and then other ones are very distorted, creating blobs or orbs. Again, another bumblebee or a honeybee. And then the one in the
Right.
I'm sorry, the one in the red, I was shooting with an infrared lens one day, and I happened to see a hornet uh, flying around the end of the porch there. And as you can see, it doesn't look anything like a hornet,
Mm-hmm.
but that's exactly what it is. Yeah, so if you scroll down a little bit and show the bottom ones, so you can see how sharp the fishing pole and the hand are. And so this indicates to me that that insect is closer to the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And the focus, it's focused farther back.
Right. That makes sense. You can even see the fishing line
Yeah,
and a
very,
little glint off of
very
the fishing
sharp.
line there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, these are ones that were insects that made it into online tabloid news services. The one on the right, you can see it's clearly like a greenish fly with wings. Um,
Again, because the far the farthest part of the photo is in focus, means that the image that's blurred is closer to the camera.
right.
Got it. Okay.
So this is another one with the strands of cobwebbing. I just happened to see it kind of drifting from the tree branches, and the sun was catching it. And so this was sent to me. I had already seen this a bunch of times, and then I will get these sometimes, and I believe this one was sent to me. They thought it was something bizarre, and I just explained to them that an insect made that. But it can create weird things. I mean, here's another one. This one was hanging straight down. This was actually frames taken out of a video that I grabbed, but this thing is actually swinging back and forth because the strand of webbing is just blowing in the wind. So any type of light breeze will just move it around. And a lot of times people will believe it's something paranormal. It's got something to do with spirits. But again, it's just a strand of the webbing.
We got a couple of comments in the chat room. I'm going to go ahead and hold those off until later. Thanks for your comments, Mike and Nick. Appreciate you guys being here tonight. Sorry for the technical difficulties we had at the beginning, but the content is really important, really good information for people that are trying to photograph UFOs.
Yeah, so this is just the spider again.
Okay.
Again, more insects. They'll create all kinds of wild patterns. And I've had, some really close friends that have been researchers as long as me, some of them maybe a little bit longer than I have, where they've caught this stuff on film and they thought it was something amazing. I lost a couple of good friends along the way because they were so dead set that it was some kind of anomaly. And actually one of the photos is the fly that's right below the In the Field logo and to the left. That was captured by a very well-known researcher. And actually, he's a photographer for National Geographic.
Wow.
But he's still out there now with different types of cameras, and he has caught some unbelievable, unexplainable anomalies. But, sometimes people get to the point where it's such an obsession that everything is a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just really got to be careful, and you can't fall into that trap. You have to stay objective and, just stay alert, watch what you're looking at. And we don't really talk anymore, but yeah, I called it out. I said, that's a fly. You can clearly see it's got wings. There's just nothing to it. And, he got angry, and hopefully someday we'll talk again. But it's unfortunate when that happens.
Very much. Very much.
Okay, that's the Hornet again. We can just pass that one. And again, what they used to call rods. They're insects. Depending on the insect's body type, wing type, legs, they'll all create a different type of pattern. The way they fly, the different styles of the beating of the wings, the sizes of the wings, there's so many different patterns that can be caught. And Fooled a lot of people. So this one is this is a famous video that was shot in 1995 by a man named Tim Edwards in Colorado. And this piece of footage was actually featured on a couple of different TV shows. And he shot this and claimed that it was a huge cigar ship up over the top of his house. So I always used to love this piece of footage. I used to think it was incredible, that he had caught this, and I didn't think about it for many, many years. And then one day in the summertime, I think it was 2017, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. And so I grabbed my camera and tried to catch it again. And I saw it with my eye, but when I went to catch it with the camera, I couldn't get it. I couldn't, it was, must have been the angle I was at, but I couldn't get it on film. So I forgot about it. And I thought to myself, if that's ever going to happen again, because the situation has to be just right. The light has to be at just the right angle. The strand of insect webbing has to be just right to catch it during the day, especially during the day. And sure enough, in 2019, I happened to be sitting out on the porch and I saw it again. And that's when I caught it. And
It's resolved.
I actually pulled the frames from the video and used them for that example. So this one is the top night shots. The people who, this was, I believe it was a security camera. I'm not sure what type of facility it was over, whether it was a hotel pool. I can't remember. But they kept picking up this weird stuff on the cameras at night. And so, no, actually, it was a live webcam. And so, people were pulling frames off showing these odd anomalies at night. And so, I began to go to this webcam and just click it on every once in a while and look at it. And one day I saw these ants, or whatever they are, crawling around the lens, and realized that's exactly what they're shooting. So because it's at night and because of the lighting, it's just creating a blob that is the insect, but it's distorting it because of different the situation, the lights, how it's reflecting, how it's moving. And so you can clearly see that during the day, it's just insects crawling around the webcam. This is just to illustrate. You can see in the bottom left, you can see the strands of webbing that are hanging with what looks like all dots along them. And that's exactly to illustrate when you don't see the spider and it's just the strand. So this was from a talk with Richard Dolan. Grant Cameron and I kind of got into it a little bit because he was posting it as something anomalous, and I disagreed. And it's pretty much just an insect. You can see the beating of the wing as it's going by. This same thing will happen if you have a long shutter speed on your camera and you're shooting an aircraft. You can see the light pattern will blink in sequence along the line, and you can see it. There's examples of it, I believe, coming up. And that's just to show the cobwebbing, how close it is to the camera, how the light picks it up like that. So this is a sundog or a mock sun, natural phenomena. The conditions have to be just right with the moisture in the air and how the sun is reflecting. And some of these, they're not all the same. As you can see, the bottom one almost looks as if there's a rainbow in a long cloud. If you look to it's more closer to the bottom right. But you can see, these have thrown people off before too, where they thought it was something anomalous, and it's really just it's been photographed many, many times. And it's almost like a rainbow, but it's kind of a short, little stubby rainbow.
Yeah. Do you know what causes those?
It depends on I believe it depends on the angle of the sun. I think it's ice crystals
Oh, okay.
that are in the air, and I'm not positive on that, so don't quote me. But it is moisture.
Right.
Whether it's frozen or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because these are visible to the naked eye. They're
Yes.
visible
Yes.
if you have sunglasses on. They can be captured on camera, um, but it's an actual atmospheric anomaly, and
Yeah.
it happens quite often. Actually, I see it here in Vegas all the time.
Yeah. There's actually one coming up that I shot myself. Yeah, this is it right here. I just happened to notice it out the door one day. Um, I've probably seen maybe 5 or 6 in my whole life.
That's kind of interesting because, like I said, out here it happens all the time. If there's clouds in the sky, you're likely to see some kind of a coloration in the clouds.
Yeah, it's kind of unique, and people get fascinated by it. They're like, "What's causing that?" It's just I can't believe that it's so strange, but I just tell them to jump online and throw sundog into Google, and it'll come up with 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
So balloons are definitely a problem, but when they're shaped like UFOs, they're even more of a problem. Um, and these have been photographed, especially from a distance. People can't really tell, um, but there's the different shapes and colors of balloons that are out there now is just mind blowing. But you know, you got to be careful of these if they're being launched because of a couple years ago there was one that had broken its mooring, and the wind took it, and there were several videos, there were a ton of photographs, but it was at such a distance that you couldn't make out the advertising on the balloon. So it made it look like it was some kind of weird looking UFO. Um, so yeah, those are definitely those could fool somebody. They're pretty realistic looking. Weather balloons, those are always a problem. Um, and they're your average Joe can get a hold of this stuff now and launch it themselves to do experiments. A lot of college students will do it at universities, and different colleges to do experiments for, different science classes. And, I had a friend of mine that had caught it on video a few years ago. And when it reaches a certain height, the pressure will cause it to explode. But on video, it was at such a distance that it looked like when it exploded, it turned into smaller objects and they all flew away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
When it was actually just the pieces of the balloon and the wind took them once it exploded. So now these have been photographed. Some of the frames that you're looking at here are actually taken from videos that were claimed to be a mothership, or just a long tubular looking UFO. And solar balloons, another thing that's launched by science classes and colleges and universities. There's a million different sizes. There's sizes, and there's a little bit of color variation, but they're always a dark color because they it's needed to be dark so the sun can heat it. And so these have been caught on video just I don't know how many times. I've seen so many videos with this in it. The Mylar balloons are a huge problem. So what makes it even worse is when they're at a distance and they've lost some of their helium. So the kind of looks like it's morphing and changing shape, and because it's blowing in the wind, because it's not, what I usually look for is the tumbling effect. So when a balloon is caught in one of those high drafts up there, it doesn't just float smoothly. It will flip and tumble. And if you can look for that and you can see that, especially with a Mylar, because as it's flipping and tumbling, it's catching the sun and it's reflecting it and creating different, flashes of light because it's tumbling. And then you can look for the shapes. I mean, there's a billion different letters and, just this one down here, I think in the right-hand corner, I believe was from a wedding. I think that's the bride and the groom that is actually on the balloon itself. And I think this escaped from their wedding. And a bunch of people were filming it and thought it was anomalous. So, yeah, those are very, very deceiving. So this one here was going around in a video for a while. And I actually didn't find it myself. I had a friend of mine that had found the festival where they had all these balloons, and he found this balloon, which is shaped like this giant bottle. And again, and again, something like that, even if I saw that in the sky, it does not look like a conventional balloon because it's shaped like a bottle. So you're looking at it thinking, that just can't be normal. It doesn't look normal, But like I said, with the technology we have now, the different styles of balloons, all the different kinds and shapes, it's just, you got to keep your eyes peeled. Military observation balloons in the past were, some people believe that they were mistaken for some of the UFO reports that took place during that time. Not as big as a blimp, but pretty big and, kind of intimidating looking, but, This one's been filmed a few times and people have thought it was something anomalous. They're called ascenders, and they use them for telecommunications and different types of research projects. And I believe there's only a couple of companies that build those, but once they're at a distance, it's really hard to tell. It can be very deceiving that it's some kind of V-shaped ship. The birds are always been a huge problem. You can see on the right side where the shutter speed completely changes the shape and the look of that bird. So depending on how it's shot, depending on the angle, depending on shutter speed, time of day, lighting, it can turn it into a UFO, and just got to be careful of that one as well. This one is flocks of birds, which are caught in night vision and infrared cameras. And for a long time, people thought that this was UFOs flying in a V shape. You can go online and find literally dozens and dozens of these videos shot in night vision. And it's definitely birds flying in formation. A few of them I had to, because it's so far away, it's hard to see the bird's wings flapping. But if you can get one that's kind of, you know, a higher resolution, and it's the camera's better than the others, if it's closer and you can make out more detail, which is what I did. I found one where once I zoomed in on it, I could literally see all the bird's wings flapping. This was sent to me because somebody thought it was anomalous. But obviously it's just a bird. This is a frame from a video that went around a few years ago. On the left side, you can see the frame. It's from a helicopter. And these two objects zip past this helicopter. And the way the wings are cocked up in the air like that, it looked as if they were almost like they were silver discs shooting by the helicopter. But as we blew up and zoomed into it, you could see that it was some type of seagull. It was off the coast of France. And a couple of us had gone in and found that there was some of these type of seagulls living in that area. And, found the skeleton of it, and the shape.
Oh, we might have hit the end of the photos.
Is that the end?
No, there might have been a problem when you sent me the file.
Let me take a look here. I think we're close to the end anyways.
Yeah, we were like 69, I think. Oh, here we go. I just had to what? Oh,
Okay.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah. This is a common thing. This has gone around before, as if a UFO had hit the plane. I went online and I collected these photos from all over the place, and they're actually just the planes hitting a bird. And a lot of times people will say, well, how come the dent, like in the one on the bottom left, doesn't have any blood on it? And, we can surmise that It just happened to hit it just the right way, and it didn't break its skin. But if you look closely at some of the others, you can clearly see that there's blood splattered inside that dent. But this is more common than you think. I talked to a friend of mine that was a pilot, and he said that, it happens pretty much every year, at least a couple times to every airport. We now have better equipment where they can avoid like the large flocks of birds. But, every so often there'll be, some big bird flying solo, and, they just don't detect it, and it slams into the nose. Lenticular clouds, very common. Commonly mistaken for UFOs for a long, long time. Most researchers know what these are. But if you scroll down a little bit to the bottom, so the deceptive ones are the ones like on the bottom right, where the sun is setting, so the cloud will just catch the edge of that sun, and it will create what looks like a UFO, but it's a lenticular cloud just catching the sun.
Yeah. This one on the right hand side looks pretty strange too.
Yeah. And the conditions have to be just right for it. I've probably seen it around here maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole life.
That's another formation that we get in Vegas all the time.
See, it's probably because it's so flat out there.
Right.
Where out here we have just hills and valleys.
I've actually caught some pretty cool lenticular cloud formations.
Yeah.
Yeah, while I was out shooting.
So this is an interesting one. For a long time, a lot of videos were going around. I actually just saw one a few days ago being passed around where they'll claim that it's a diamond-shaped UFO. And what it is, actually, it's taking whatever they're shooting, which could be a star or a spotlight or a headlight, and the light is taking on the shape of the shutter in the camera.
Hmm.
So this will create, and depending on the make and the model of the camera, they're all going to be a little bit different from each other.
That one's interesting. I've never had any kind of anomalous captures like this. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, we went over that one already. That's the black dot. So this is something that they like to do, and these are 2 different people who actually tried to pass these off as something anomalous. So they'll shoot into the sun, but they'll use street lamps. And when the camera is overwhelmed, it will blot out the actual street pole itself holding the light. So it almost erases it. And the top of the light, the street lamp will just be hovering there, and it will look like it's a UFO. And we used Google Earth to find out where these streets were, and dropped down there and took a look ourselves from the exact position. And sure enough, those street lamps were there where they claimed there was UFOs. This is another interesting one. So the photo with the man was claimed to be an orb in motion. Now, I had only discovered this just a short time before I came across this photo online. So I created all the ones you see on the bottom. And I did that by taking a strand of my hair and dropping it in front of the camera, close to the lens, and shooting with a flash.
Hmm.
And so it looks like it's an orb in motion. This happens a lot, especially when people are, they got a lot of hair. This is, pretty well known among researchers, a fall streak hole. And, this is another atmospheric, and don't quote me, it's either a patch where it gets cold and it drops out and creates what looks like a hole. And so, of course, a lot of people have assumed over the years that, there was a UFO there and it took off and it blew a hole through the clouds. But this is a natural phenomena as well. It happens all the time. Drones are the new huge problem for people who are trying to hunt anomalies. You got to keep your eyes peeled because, like these photos show, there are a million different kinds. There are a million different kinds of light configurations. You can modify them yourself to look like UFOs. There's just so many of them now, so you have to be really careful. I always tell people to look for, the first thing you want to do is listen. If you can if you're seeing this where it's an area where there's not too much noise, just be quiet and listen, and you'll hear the buzzing of the propellers. If you can't hear that, look for its flight characteristics, and they will fly a certain way. They'll zip back and forth, and it depends on who's operating it. They may be trying to mess with you, or they may just be out trying to have some fun with their drone. And they're limited to how far they can go away from the operator. They're limited to how long they can stay aloft. I think the commercial drones only stay up I think it's a half hour or 45 minutes before they have to be recharged again. I'm not sure if the larger military drones can stay aloft longer, but not much longer. So this is why I have a problem with the whole the latest incident that they're talking about that happened off the California coast near the Channel Islands, with being drones. I mean, they were miles from the coast. It would have been virtually impossible for somebody to fly it from the coast out to the ship. And I guess they radioed a couple of the ships that were around there to ask them if they had drones, and I think one or two of them did have drones, but they weren't using them. And again, some of them were up for, I believe, for a couple hours, maybe. Yeah, a few hours. So, it's kind of hard to say that those were drones, but
The Undead Gaucho just popped on and left a couple comments. Thanks.
oh yeah, he's got a good podcast too.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, John. Yes, it is a very important discussion. And we're trying to get the information out to as many people as possible to help make the evidence that's out there more authentic,
Right.
to bring up the credibility of the work that is being done by legitimate researchers.
Yeah, it's always good to, uh, get people familiar with things that they don't really see or they don't look for.
Yep.
And here's another problem with the drones. There was some footage that went around a few years ago. Uh, I believe the kid finally admitted that he did it, but this video just got discussed and went everywhere. And the reason being is because it shot a beam out of it like these in these photos. And some people were saying, well, drones can't do that. They don't have a beam. And, you know, I had a guy in the field. He's actually an amazing researcher from Canada, and he his name is Charles Lamoureux, and he very well versed with the drones. He's has his own. He's he knows the different brands. And him and I kind of got into a little bit of a heated debate on, I thought this was I was fooled by it. I thought it was authentic footage. I couldn't see it being a drone. And he finally he found a link showing me this brand of drone and shooting this beam down. And we finally came to an agreement that yeah, he was right, and he schooled me on the drones.
Nice. Well, it's important for you to be able to accept when you make a mistake.
Absolutely,
People don't realize, but making mistakes are opportunities to learn and get better at what you're doing.
absolutely.
It's not, a mistake doesn't make you uh, incapable of being relevant to whatever you're doing. It just means that you're human. Humans make mistakes, but you learn from your mistakes. But you only learn from those mistakes when you admit that you've made a mistake.
Hmm.
It's something that I teach my kids and tell them all the time. It's okay to make a mistake. Just admit that you.
It's tough with the kids.
Yeah, yeah, true.
So this one is not so common, but it does happen. And some of these frames were taken from videos that were shot by people that thought that these were some kind of anomalies. Um, they're plastic bags. They're caught in the wind, and if the conditions are right, uh, they can be lifted very high up into the atmosphere. I've seen videos where they're just, it's a plastic bag and it's, hundreds, thousands of feet off the ground. Um, the frames that are on the upper right side are actually taken from a video uh, from a guy who he's out there filming a lot, and again we got into a heated debate. uh, I slowed it down and I watched it very carefully, and I told him, I said, it's either one of two things. It's either a empty plastic bag or it's a half deflated balloon, and it just looks bizarre. I mean, moving through the sky like that. And of course, it's changing its shape because it's, not tightly filled with any kind of like helium or anything. So, you know, this leads to people believing it's morphing into different shapes and, you know, so, well, like I said, it's not a very common one. This one is pretty common. This one's been mistaken for things. So the jets will create the contrails, and if it's just right and the sun is setting, the contrails will catch this and just create all kinds of bizarre shapes. I had a couple friends of mine. One of them, he was shooting these nonstop and thought that, these UFOs were showing up in the same place all the time. And unfortunately, we figured out that, there was a flight path in that area. And he would always catch them when the sun was setting on certain days. And, you know, just something else to look for. Blimps are a problem. there was just one, I think it was a few months back. It had fooled a bunch of people. It went viral. Um, I, as a MUFON investigator, when I was with them, investigated a case right here uh, where they had seen something go over at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was at a distance, so um, obviously they couldn't make out the details, but it was lit and it looked like a UFO. So after checking with some places, a couple local airports, we found out that the Goodyear blimp was flying back from an air show at that time over this area, and that's exactly what it was. Of course, it's at night, um, and it wasn't one of the kinds where it has the type of screen on it, so it's lit in a different way, but they couldn't see that it said Goodyear because it was nighttime. So it turned into a UFO. And, you know, if there's any researchers that are familiar with cameras, long exposures can create bizarre distortions. There was a time where I had set up on a bridge over the highway and was taking long exposure shots of the highway with all the lights stretched out in long strands, and I was doing all kinds of experiments with those long exposures. And um, one clue is, like I was saying earlier, you can see the pattern of the blinking navigation lights, and you can see that pattern repeat itself and repeat itself along the separate line of lights that are on continuously. So I, always suggest to people that if you're going to try to go out and shoot, um, and try to capture anything that's anomalous, you know, don't do it with a long exposure, because you'll distort whatever you're shooting. Same thing here. My friend took these. He's a member of ITF. Um, and he shot these and sent them to me so that I could use them. So here we go with the balloons. Oh, no, it's not an. Oh, okay, we did the balloons. So the order got a little bit messed up. So these are Photoshop fakes. And this is why a lot of researchers now won't trust photographs, because they can be manipulated very, very easily. I put one on my Twitter page the other day of a friend of mine that posted an octopus swimming up on a scuba diver, and the octopus was gigantic behind the scuba diver. Um, it took me over an hour to find that original picture of that octopus, which was very small and close to the camera. And so they photoshopped the scuba diver in front of this small octopus, making it look like it was gigantic. Um, this is one of the things that I learned how to do when I went to college for digital imaging. And um, so photo manipulation was, some people call it photo retouching. I like to call it photo manipulation because that's what you're doing. You're manipulating the image to use it for something else. Um, this stuff can be so easily done now, um, and you can learn the basic skills of it. And it takes a little while to get really super good at it, to where you can fool the average person looking at it, goes, oh my god. But I mean, there are thousands of photoshopped images that are out there, and it's used on a constant basis. I will use an image back search to find the original, um, and different little tricks on how to try to get that original. Like I said, it took me over an hour to find that octopus the other night. I didn't think I was going to find it, but I finally found it. So these images in the center were Paul David's. He was the writer and the producer for the Showtime film Roswell. Um, and he played a small part in it as the base photographer. And these photos have gone around and being used as, the real photographer at Roswell. Um, and these scenes with him were so short in the film that even people that saw the film completely forgot that it even took place. So you'll see people post these and go, this was the base photographer at Roswell, and he's taking pictures of the aliens that they dragged out of the wreck. Um, and, that is not the case at all. So, this is a well-known channel that likes to take, what they like to do is they like to take especially military footage, and they will drop CGI into it, whether it's a UFO or whether it's something else. So what they did here was, on the right side are 2 frames of the actual footage, which is an expedition. I believe it's in Antarctica or uh, somewhere up there. Maybe Greenland, I'm not sure. And then they use CGI and put these gigantic pyramids in there. And as you can see, they're walking into a giant doorway in the pyramid. Um, these guys have been doing this for years. And, you know, I guess they like doing it. Some people actually believe that, this stuff is completely authentic, but it's manipulated footage. So these are phone apps, and these are starting to become more of a problem. Um, Footage that was uh, taken with one of these phone apps was actually played on the show The View a couple months ago, and we recognized it right away because the phone app that they were using, that the person used to hoax it, um, only had 6 or 7 different options. And what it would do is you can choose the type of UFO. So the one you're looking at is just for photographs. But there's ones out now that can be used just for video. And a lot of times you'll see these videos pop up, and we try to stay familiar with the different apps and the different images that they have within the app, so we know which ones that they're, oh yeah, okay, they're using one of those, that's from that app. So this made the rounds a few years ago. It was claimed to be a giant disc-shaped UFO over the Earth. What it really was a film at a planetarium. I think it's Brazil. Is that right? Is that what it says? Yeah, it's Brazil. So it's a planetarium, and what it was a CGI simulated uh, asteroid strike on the Earth. And so somebody freeze framed it while it was exploding, and then it just went around as, the the International Space Station caught a giant disk floating over the Earth, and we finally tracked it down to this planetarium. This is more Photoshop. Some of these have become so famous and been used so many times, especially the ones with the world leaders shaking hands with the aliens. One of these just went around recently, and it's a type of mirage, a Fata Morgana. I think that's how you say it, a Fata Morgana. Creates a false horizon. And a lot of times it will take a ship or a boat, and you're at such a distance that it will distort it and make it look like your classic UFO. So it's floating over the ocean. Optical illusion, been around for a long time. That's why I couldn't believe the one that just went around recently, because this type of optical illusion has been known about for a very long time. And I saw it on a bunch of news sites, and people were passing it around, and I was like, so we go through these cycles where people forget about something. It'll go around, and then you won't see it again for a while, and then it'll pop back up again, so. Same thing with the photo app, taken out of the window of a plane. That's the same thing, CGI. Yeah, some of them I doubled. This one was found by accident. It was going around as a photo of a gray alien in the woods. I had a friend of mine that just happened to watch this movie. It was a Spanish sci-fi film with subtitles. And he happened to watch this film and saw this alien in that film. And we would have never found it if it wasn't for him watching this little obscure science fiction film. This is the heat shield from Opportunity when it landed on Mars, and it blew the heat shield off. Everybody was claiming that it was a UFO that had crashed. That's obviously not what it is, but if the opportunity is there, they'll use it. So this one was going around for a long time as something anomalous back in the woods. But if you look at it closely, the illuminator from the trail cam is bouncing the reflection off of the deer's eyes, and it's creating that reflection up above its head. If you look closely, you can see the deer's ears, but it's flipped upside down. And you can see the shape of its ears. These are interesting, and many have been caught on film. Ring-shaped vortices, and these can be created in a variety of ways by shooting smoke out of like a pipe. They have machines now that will create these. Like they'll bring them to like the Burning Man festival that they have out on the desert, and they'll shoot these rings out, and they'll just float over the crowd, and it's just a spinning ring of smoke that lasts for a while. Some of them will stay up there for a while before they dissipate. This was CGI, and it went around the world. There were so many people from different countries using this and just photoshopping it into these photos all over the world. And right here in the bottom right-hand corner is the original digital illustration that somebody created and everybody was using. This one here, I always tell this story. I lost a good friend over this. He had been sent this photo of this house, and I recognized it right away that it was from a phone app. And so we got into a heated debate, and he got very angry with me because he had posted this man's whole story about this UFO on his website. And the story went that the aliens came into his house and they gave him a tattoo of an alien. And so I said to him, "Don't you think that sounds a little outlandish?" So I showed him the phone app and I told him, I said, "This is how he created this photo. He is not telling you the truth." And, like I said, heated debate. We haven't spoken probably a couple years. He runs a website, which I did. I wrote some articles for, and I designed his logo for him and stuff. And unfortunately, it happens. You know, like I said about the other one, maybe someday we'll talk again. But it's nothing to lose a friendship over. I'm not trying to be, uh, you know, I never call myself an expert, and I hate that word. Um, but some people will take it as that I'm being cocky, or that I'm just a debunker, and they're right in a certain way. I mean, I will debunk things that I see, but I also know that there's a real phenomena out there, and I've shot it on video and shot it in photographs. So, you know, I guess there's a difference between me and just 100% debunker. These were the Trepang submarine photos. There was a set of them that came out. Uh, and this one was found to have some digital manipulation with Photoshop. And you can see here the two pieces that I took out are the identical cloud. So I'm not sure if all those photos have been manipulated, but once I find one, then the rest becomes suspect. And so, I'm not sure where those came from. They've never tracked them down to who released them onto the internet. So, you know, if it's got the manipulation, I definitely don't trust it. This has been filmed from a distance. The aerial sky shows with the skydivers. They have the pyrotechnics attached to their costumes, and from a distance, these can look very bizarre. But again, it's just an aerial show. We've tracked down a couple of them that people had caught on video from a distance, and found out that they were having an aerial show in that area. And here's one right here. This one went viral. They filmed it from a distance. We found out that there was an aerial show in that area on that day. Mist and moisture in the air. Often people will catch this stuff. It can create all kinds of bizarre anomalies. I have shot hundreds of photographs where there's just one line running through the whole photograph and nothing else, because it was one drop of water and I just happened to catch it. This right here wasn't even raining. It was just humid outside. So the humidity in it picked up the moisture in the air like that. Um, so with a flash at night, it can pick up, insects and moisture and dust, and So you got to be on the lookout for that. Seeds and debris like that, you'll pick that up on camera as well. Water droplets on a window. I just saw one the other day that somebody was pushing as a UFO. Again, shooting through a window, if there's one water droplet and it's sitting just the right way, it'll look like there's the one right there in the center was one that I took myself. And I had one water droplet on the window, right almost above, to the left and above the Kmart sign. And it will create just weird anomalies. Missile launches always, go viral. People are, it's a UFO, but they have a distinct pattern. And you can see that it's a missile. It will leave long, long trails. The spiral ones, I believe those were from a missile that went out of control and spun into a spiral. But most of them are shaped like the bottom ones. They'll leave a long trail. It will move slowly across the sky and leave a long trail like that. There's a lot of videos out there of it, a lot of photographs, different missile launches from different areas. That's another one. That was a famous one over Siberia, photographed by multiple people. The rolling shutter artifact, this is when the light overwhelms the cell phone and it will create these images of these long bands of light. And one of the reasons why people are always mistaken that it's something anomalous is if you look at the center one, you can see that it looks like it comes down and goes through the cloud. But what's actually happening is the same thing with the dock on the upper left, where the band passes over something dark, it will come right through the band of light. So it looks like it's behind it. But usually it happens during a lightning storm. You'll see people catch photos when the lightning is blasting, and when that light overwhelms the camera, it causes this to happen. And you can Google that rolling shutter, and it will talk about it. Orbs are always a problem. And like I've stated before in the other presentation and to other people, not all orbs are this, because I've seen some on video that I can actually see with the naked eye that are moving around in a really bizarre way. But I've done experiments with cameras taking a mist bottle with water and shooting it horizontally in front of a camera at different distances up to the camera, spraying mist into the air and creating this exact situation where the camera will hit it, it will turn it into a complete orb, it's see-through. This will happen with dust as well. It will create orbs because as soon as the light hits it, it's out of focus and it will create a perfect circle. They'll come in different colors depending on, an angle of the camera, the lighting, what's behind it, different situations like that. So a lot of times it's dust and moisture. Chinese lanterns, I shot this. We had launched a few at a family get-together. Once they get at a distance, you can't really make out the structure of the lantern anymore. So it looks like it becomes something anomalous. These have been caught on video multiple times. Usually they'll just burn, they'll go out, and then you'll see the debris fall to the ground. This is a video that we had debunked because the background, we noticed the same background kept repeating itself going by like a Fred Flintstone cartoon. And so we figured it out by watching the video and slowing it down that this same background kept going by over and over again. And we realized they just used a loop. CGI is tough, though, because they're getting better and better at it. It's another orb shot with moisture. Another water droplet on the window. These are different dust particles caught on security cameras and CCTV cameras. If they're close to the camera, it's going to distort it into an orb, and it's going to create, it's going to be moving around. This is always a problem, and people are, a lot of people think that these are spirits, and they have all kinds of things that they think they are. I've done experiments where I've taken and beaten a pillow in front of the camera and then turned it on and tried to get, these floating pieces of dust, and I've captured it where it looks like an orb, but it's just a piece of dust. This is a CGI that we uncovered. It was it was supposed to be helicopters escorting a UFO, and as you can see, when it's supposed to go behind the building, they did some poor rendering, and you can see the UFO cover the edge of the building as it goes behind it. So they got a little sloppy there.
Yeah, I just have to say that is extremely sloppy because it's not hard to do a mask in video.
But as you're watching the video, you never see that
Yeah.
because it's going so fast that you just don't see it. But it's one of the things that we look for, where the suspect object has to pass behind something like a light pole. We found it again with a triangle over in England that was passing behind a chimney. And as it passed by, it just covered part of the chimney.
Hmm.
So it's some of the things that we look for when we're trying to take apart a CGI video. This was the app I was talking about where they used it on the show The View.
I think this was on Fox News recently.
Yes, it was. Same exact footage. And there's a frame from the app, and I put the object floating in my living room.
You would think these mainstream media outlets would know better.
It amazes me sometimes. It really does. I mean, it just blows me away because they have some amazing photographers working for them. So this is one of the anomalous things that I've shot. And like we've talked about before, it's a method of skyfishing where I will set my camera up on a tripod and I will rapid fire the button and capture a series of photographs. So I never really count. It's usually, 10, 20, sometimes I'll do 30 photographs. And it's just pointing the camera into a set spot in the sky and just firing off these pictures. So that's the easy part. The hard part is taking the hundreds of photographs into the computer and going through each one and trying to find anything. And sometimes I can shoot 200-300 photographs and get absolutely nothing. A couple bugs, maybe a couple leaves, but every so often I'll catch something that I can't explain. So this was one of them. Really weirdly shaped. Definitely not my favorite one, but you'll see it in a minute.
Sorry.
Oh, so this is a frame from a night vision shot that I took out in a place called the Brimfield State Forest. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see a frame from that video. That orb or light or whatever you want to call it started out as a small pinpoint in the woods. Now, the frame is deceiving because it was pitch black night. It was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no houses around there. No one lives around that area. And like I said, it's deceiving because it was pitch black out, but with the night vision, it kind of makes it look like daytime. So it started out as a tiny point of light. I had a friend of mine with me. I could only see it through the night vision camera. And this point of light started to pulse, and it grew kind of bigger and bigger, and it got to a certain point, and the image below it is where I'm simulating where it was in a daytime shot. So then it began to get smaller and smaller, and then it just shut off. And, we couldn't see anything with our naked eye, but I could see it through the night vision camera. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what it was. At first, I thought it was somebody in the woods with a flashlight, but it was too high up in the trees to be a flashlight, so I kind of ruled that out. But, that's all I can really tell you about that one. This is a sequence I put together of objects that I had shot. It's the same object, but what I did was I overlaid different frames to show the movement of it. And this was with the night vision camera as well. So this is using the skyfishing technique. And like I've explained before to a lot of people, in this sequence of photos, and you're going to see that in, I believe, the next photo as well. This lands somewhere in the middle of the sequence of photos. So if it's 10 or 20 photos, same thing. This one was caught the same way. So I fire off 10, 20 photographs, and people have proposed that, like this one, that it's a balloon. That's impossible for it to be a balloon or a bird or a plane. And the reason I say this is because the photograph before it and after it have nothing in it. And it was shot, I don't know, a fraction of a second between each photograph. So a balloon or a bird or a plane or anything like that would show the movement throughout the series of photographs. This appeared in one photo within the sequence. And this is the photo that's featured in Diana Pasulka's book, American Cosmic. So I think that's the last one, right?
Yeah, these were...
Yeah, that's the video, but it won't play.
Okay.
Because it's a PDF.
Unfortunately, the photos were out of order, and I think it's because of changing from the app you created it into PDF. I mean,
Yeah, it probably messed it up.
we had so many technical difficulties in the beginning. Um, but I think it was still an important presentation. It was very packed full of good information, and I think if anybody who's interested in doing this type of research and investigation in the field, uh, this is exactly what they need to look for, so that they can rule out all of the misidentifications
Yeah.
and
Well,
get down to the real authentic stuff.
yeah. Well, I always tell people that once you build yourself a library, and what I mean by that is you build yourself a library of everything that's in the sky that's mundane or natural. And so you become familiar with how birds look, insects, atmospheric things, how planes look at a distance, how navigation lights look at night. And you become aware of everything that's up there. And then once you see something that doesn't fit with any of those things, then you kind of want to focus on it because maybe it's something that's not normal, that's anomalous. Um, and so we've always tried to, whenever I discover something new, like let's say that the ascender balloon that we were looking at, where it's shaped like a V and it's the big blue structure, when I discovered that, I discovered it on a video that was shot at a distance. So it looked like a flying V. Um, and then um, I just happened to be searching balloons one day. I was going through hundreds of balloon uh, photos and different catalogs that were selling different balloons, kind of just to get an idea of what's out there, what the shapes are like, um, different companies, what they're selling, what's the new technology that they're coming up with. And I come across this site that's got these giant ascender research balloons. And I said, that is that video. That looks exactly like that video. So what we did was we got a hold of somebody who lived in that area, that was a friend of somebody in the group, and they called around and made some calls, and sure enough they found out that there was a I think it was like an R&D lab in that area that had been flying one of those on that date in that area, and we tracked it down. So once we find out about something new, I try to show it to everybody in the group so they're well aware of it. Um, and I'll create a graphic for it and I'll put it into the file with the other ones so everybody can have access to it. Um, but it's one of the things that's tough is like the drones. The drones are becoming more and more of a problem because there's so many different ones, and they're commercially available. They're coming in different sizes now. Like the pictures we were looking at, the different light configurations, they can modify them to look like a UFO. And, so like I always tell people, you just got to keep your eyes peeled. Always pay attention to what's going on, what's new, what's up there, what's flying around. So,
I had a couple questions, but I'm going to skip my questions, go straight to the listener questions, and then because we're way over time, and I know you're 3 hours ahead of me, so it's past midnight there.
yep.
Mike S asked, "Have you ever examined Billy Meyer photographs?
Yes, I have. So let me tell you a little story about him. So when I first got into ufology years ago, 30 plus years ago, I was amazed by Billy Meyer's work. And I thought he had captured, you know, this guy had the golden egg. He captured some just like mind-blowing stuff. And for a few years, I stayed steady with that. I thought, this guy's just unbelievable. And the amount of material that he was capturing. As I got older and I got into photography, I began to take a much closer look at his photographs and his videos and realized that a lot of them were absolutely fake. And he was building models and photographing them. And I have graphics for that as well, but I left those out. I didn't want to go into that whole thing because, that's a whole nother rabbit hole by itself. But it's been proven conclusively that he was building models. And, the photographs, he was using what they call force perspective, shooting small model UFOs next to a fake little pine tree. Just there was so much of it that was faked. And there was one that they called the wedding cake UFO, which had like silver balls around it. And they found all the parts that he had built that out of. And if anybody's interested, they can shoot me an email and I'll send them the material and I'll show them exactly what he was doing.
Nick Madrid says, I'd be interested to know what you think of the recent video and photographs from different angles of the Montreal airport sightings, if you've seen those, Scott.
Absolutely. So when I first saw it, I was like, it looks pretty interesting. And then some photos began to come out where it was shot from different angles, and then I noticed in the video there was about a half a foot of snow on the ground. So I jumped on YouTube. No, I'm sorry, not YouTube. I went to Google and I found a bunch of webcams that were live in Montreal. And this had just recently happened, like in the last couple days. In the webcams, there was not a speck of snow on the ground. So that was a red flag for me right there. And then it came out on a French website, or maybe it's Canadian, I'm not sure, but the article is in French, and it explained the whole thing, that a bunch of students up there, I believe at a college, but I'm not positive, it was a CGI project that a bunch of these college kids had worked on. And so not only that, but they had the airport itself had saw this video, and they posted on their Facebook page that this never happened, that it was just complete bunk. And I believe if you go to Facebook and you go to Montreal Airport, the page will come up and you can scroll down and you can see how they called it an April Fool's prank and it didn't really happen. And it mentions the fact that there's no snow on the ground up there, but there's snow in the video.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What that brings to mind is all of the information that you gave in your presentation tonight. Um, it's it's important to know this information, and when you're examining any kind of photographic or footage type of evidence for a sighting, the most important part of that evidence is the witness testimony. If you don't have witness testimony, then the evidence itself is only going to stand up as far as, if it shows something that's, you know that you have already identified or as something that's easily misidentified or a hoax, then the testimony doesn't really make that much difference.
Right.
But
Right.
if you have something that's truly anomalous without that witness testimony, then you still have nothing, right?
Right. So,
Because you need to know time of day, um,
right.
settings on the camera, the type of equipment that was used. You need to know all this information and what the person was doing. I mean, it's so important to have, um, not just witness testimony, but truthful, accurate witness testimony.
Yes. And there's kind of like a set of red flags that I look for, and if it's posted and it doesn't have a date or a location, those are red flags right away. If the video is usually like a minute or under, it's probably going to be CGI. Uh, the Montreal UFO was a red flag for me automatically because it was under a minute, um, and the camera stopped filming with the objects right in front of the camera, which that's a huge red flag for me because the things that I've caught on video, I'm keeping that camera on that until it disappears and I can't see it anymore. I am going to keep on filming and keep on filming. There are so many of these videos where it ends, it'll begin and end with the object right in front of the video, right in front of the camera.
Mhm.
That's a huge red flag right there. You have to look for that. CGI, of course, is hard to render. So they'll usually do short clips, like I said, a minute or under. But back to what you were saying, if you don't have any witness testimony, it's kind of that's a problem right there. Date, time, what kind of camera you were using, where were you standing, what time of day. If you can't ask those questions, it's a red flag. You know.
Definitely. Yeah. So, Scott, with that, let's go ahead and close this out. But before we do that, I'd like you to leave the audience or the listeners with what should they take away from this? What's the most important thing? What are your final thoughts about this?
Um,
Oh,
you know,
but before you answer that, there is one thing that I really want to drive home. My final thoughts. Number one is that you've taken a lot of heat for the work that you do because you're trying to sort through thousands of photos and hundreds of hours of footage to get to the most authentic, most durable, um, evidence that's out there. It's not because you don't believe that the phenomena is real. It's because why? Why do you do it?
because I am. I mean, some people would say, especially in my family, that I'm obsessed with trying to track it down. That you know, it's I'm just trying to find out the truth, and part of that is I guess some of it stems from me being fooled in the beginning. Like I said with the Billy Meyer thing, I was fooled by a few people for the first few years that I was getting involved. I got fooled a handful of times. And so that kind of, I guess that kind of made my skin thicker, where I really wanted to find, I know the phenomena exists, but I want to see real evidence for the real phenomena. And there's too many people out there faking it. So, I think it's just, especially with the internet, there's so many people out there passing around misinformation and hoaxed information. It's made it a lot tougher for people to track down, hey, this guy over here, he just shot this weird stuff, and it's like nothing he's ever seen before. Whereas I'll go online and this guy will say, I saw this amazing video, and I'll go to the YouTube channel and it's filled with all CGI videos, so it's trying to get to the doorstep of the authentic footage of things that people are actually capturing that are totally unexplainable.
Yeah, you need to be on the right path to find the right truth. If you're following the wrong trail of evidence, you're never going to get to the real truth. You know,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
so that's important, man. I want people to understand that you are not a, a non-believer. You're not a total debunker.
No,
It's not your goal to debunk.
no, and
And
just to say something about that if people believe that I am just a debunker, they can go to my YouTube channel and look at the videos that I've shot. And I've shot some anomalous stuff that I can't explain. And if you're interested, just go there, put my name in, my page will come up, take a good long look at some of the videos that I've shot. I'm out there all the time. My latest video was just a couple months ago. I shot what we call a flash bulb. And, you know, I'm going out next weekend. I'm going out next Friday night. I'm taking a trip up to the Brimfield State Forest. I'm going to take all my equipment up there, and I'm going to see what I can catch. So,
very cool.
I know the phenomena is real. I've seen it. I've filmed it. But if I see something fake online, I'm going to call it out.
Yeah,
That's the
and
bottom line.
the community should be thankful that there's people like you that are doing that work, because if it weren't, if nobody was holding these people accountable, or and in some cases it is misidentified, and it's people that are
Absolutely.
legitimately fooled by their own captures. But if there weren't people out there like you doing the due diligence, then everybody would be falling into the trap of misidentifying or falling victim to a hoax. So
Absolutely.
I personally, I want to thank you for the work you do. I mean, I can see that there is countless hours that you've put into this work. I mean, from the early 90s until now, to be doing this, collecting the evidence that you've collected. It's just it's an endless, thankless endeavor, but it's like you said, it's an obsession.
Yeah. It's and I mean, for anybody who's picked up Diana Pasulka's book, American Cosmic, the third chapter is where she wrote about me, and the chapter opens with somebody coming at me and calling me a debunker. And she saw it for herself. She saw it happen a couple dozen times where I called stuff out and people got pissed. And if you're set in your beliefs and you have these preconceived notions about something, they're not going to want to hear it. They want to believe that either what they saw or what they captured was an authentic UFO. And if someone comes along and tries to knock the legs out from underneath that, a lot of times people don't like it. And I totally understand. I understand completely. But I don't do it to be an a-hole. You know, I'm not a troll, and I guess in some ways I am a debunker because I do debunk things, but I look at that as part of our toolbox when we're trying to get to the real stuff. And it's got to be done, especially with today's digital age and the internet. It's got to be done. There's just too many people out there pushing things that are misidentified and hoaxes, and so it's just something that I started to do when I was finding my way, and it's something that I'll continue to do.
Very cool. Would you say that's your final thought, or did you have one other final thought?
um I would like it more if people would, you know, I always have people come to me and they always say, "Man, I've never seen a UFO." And I say to them, "How much do you look at the sky?" "Well, I don't look at it very much." I said, "Well, how do you expect to see a UFO? Because if you never look for it, you're never going to find it." And there's people that live their whole lives and rarely ever look up. you know Whereas my two children from my other marriage, um, and I've done it a little bit with my child from this marriage, where we'll sit out in the backyard, and I could just sit out there and watch for hours, and even if I don't have a camera on me, I'll sit out there with binoculars and just scan the clouds and just watch. And I mean, there the the actual phenomena is so far and few between that um, that if you don't look, you're never going to see it.
Hmm.
So I encourage people to go out there, get some cameras, set it up, maybe even just put the video cam pointed at one spot. During the day, I shoot with an infrared camera as well, with an infrared filter. Go out there, experiment, set up the camera, point it at the sky. Even if you don't see anything or you're not paying attention to the camera, let it run for a while. Then take that footage, bring it into your computer, and just slowly go through it and watch it very closely. Sooner or later, you're going to catch something, because that phenomena is out there, but there's not many people doing that. They don't set up cameras, they don't watch the sky, you know. So I encourage anybody who wants to capture this to go out there, experiment, get some equipment, start filming. You'll catch something sooner or later.
Very cool. Scott, I just thought of another suggestion that I wanted to make for you.
Hmm.
Something for you to consider. There's a group called the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies.
Great people.
Have you submitted your findings to that group and requested membership?
I did not. Uh,
That's what I would suggest you consider doing.
Rich Hoffman is a member of In the Field,
Is he? Okay, cool.
and he has encouraged me a couple of times to maybe get involved. Um, but I feel dwarfed by those guys, man. Those guys are they got some badass people working on that panel, and um, you know, like the analysis they did of the Aquadilla video, which was just blew me away. I mean, those guys are top notch, and um, I think if I had the time, I would definitely love to get involved with them. Um, and I'm still thinking about it. I still, I'm not sure what I can bring to the table for those guys, because they got some serious credentials, those guys. But you know, I'll think about it. Maybe it should be something that maybe that could be like a next step, to join up with them.
I would encourage it. Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure you know Rich Hoffman. He's one of the founding members.
Yeah, yeah. Rich,
Uh,
Rich is a good guy.
so, um, but as far as you know, your credentials, okay, I do agree that those guys are heavy hitters in the scientific community.
Yeah.
but they're doing this part time. They're doing this. Most of those guys, if they're not retired, they're they're doing this only part time.
Hmm.
You're full time into this, man, and you've been doing it for 30 years almost.
Hmm.
And I mean, these guys could probably learn some things from you. So
Well, I know Rich has made a few comments here and there on stuff that I've posted in the field, so he knows what I do. Um, and at one point in the beginning, when they were first kind of forming and getting it together, he made a couple comments to me that maybe I should get involved if I thought that I could bring something to the table. And I never really took him up on it. I just kind of watched them form from afar and thought, man, these guys are just so badass. It's one of the for me, it's one of the most respected groups for me being in this field is that the work that they do is just awesome. I mean,
yeah,
it's just, that's what they're doing right now. MUFON should have done a long time ago because, they should have brought together like different people in the different sciences that wanted to get involved. Not saying nothing bad about MUFON because they do have a bunch of really good people working for them, but you know, the SCU is just they're amazing.
I
They're amazing.
agree. I agree. They're doing some really, really important work. Uh, and they're growing. They're continuously growing,
Mhm.
adding new members to their ranks, different disciplines, different perspectives. Um, I just think I believe that you have a lot to offer, and um, if anything, you're going to learn something from being part of that group.
That's
You
for
know,
sure.
yeah, which could help you in your own search for the truth. So I just highly
It's true.
encourage you to get involved with that. I know it's an extra commitment, um, but man, you're already committed. You're one of the most uh, dedicated people to this topic that I've ever met.
Well, thanks.
And outside of the haters and the people that get upset with you um, for telling them their what their photos or images really are, there are a huge number of people that follow your work that support what you're doing, and that's encouraging too.
It
That
is.
that adds to the motivation. I know that you would do this even if nobody was looking because you're searching for answers for yourself. I totally get that.
If I had, it's like I always tell people that, you've heard people worried about how many followers they have or,
Right. Right.
how big their group is and and that's great. That's great and everything. But like you just said, I'd still be doing it if nobody was looking
Yep.
because I'm looking for answers and that's what I want. And if I can get those answers and maybe get a couple pieces of the puzzle and throw them out to the rest of everybody so they can see it, then I'll be happy with that.
That just tells me you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not doing it for clicks. You're not doing it for money. Uh, you're doing it to really sincerely find some answers to your
Yeah.
questions. Um, I know this because that's the same reason why I do my podcast.
Hmm.
I do my podcast even if nobody was listening. Thankfully, people are listening, so that opens up doors for me to be able to talk to other people.
Yeah.
There's certain people that wouldn't even talk to me unless I had a platform, unfortunately. But thankfully, the people that I have approached have been more than willing to talk to me and share their experiences and their perspectives and knowledge, which makes it 100% worth the effort. And I know you feel the same way about what you're doing.
I do.
Keep doing it, man, because it's important work.
You too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Scott, just give people real quick how they can get in contact with you, find out more about you, and that kind of stuff.
They can find me on Twitter. It's Scott Browne ITF on the end. Or they can find me on YouTube, put in Scott Browne /UFO. My page will come up. Can find me on Facebook. You can email me. It's Spyra5, SPYRA5 at AOL.com, if you can believe that. It's the same email I've had since I got on the internet.
That's funny.
Back in the 90s. Back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Same email. I have not changed my email.
Of the people, of the many people that I know, two of you have AOL addresses, and it's because you had AOL ever since you started.
We're dinosaurs. We're
Right.
dinosaurs.
Yeah. All right, Scott. Again, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge and insight with me and the people that listen. And the invitation's always open. If you want to come back on, you have some new information you want to share, or you want to get a message out to the people that listen to this program, please let me know.
Absolutely. I love talking to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Scott. And with that, folks, thank you everybody who's been here tonight for your comments and your participation in the conversation. And everybody have a good night.